have some things that were automatic.
Tonight, our Farmersville Town Board met for the purpose of completing the environmental assessment forms relating to the passage of our local law here. It's very predictable, of course, we feel what happened here. The fact that the town board already had a negative declaration prepared tells us that's exactly where they planned on going. And all of the backing and filling that was done during this allegedly hard look at their law was very clear where they wanted to end up. So they backed and filled into exactly where they wanted to be, which was a negative declaration. So this now will be sent to the county of Cattaraugus for review to the planning board. We certainly hope that they take a harder look at the law than this town board did, but we clearly know where this town board wants to go, which is with the project. So very disappointing, but predictable nonetheless. Well, isn't that interesting that we've just discovered that? We've known all along that on this board we have a number of people who are compromised. We've got a town clerk whose father and mother are getting a wind turbine. We have a deputy clerk who's getting a wind turbine. We have the supervisor who's married to the judge whose sister-in-law is the clerk, and his in-laws are getting a turbine. And we have a gentleman who's getting a turbine, Mr. Westfall, who's a councilman, and we also have Mr. Zink, whose parents are getting multiple turbines. So how it is that we have a group of townspeople where only 2 or 3 of everyone that sits around that table does not have a financial interest with their fingers in the pie tells me that this is not a very fair process, and that they're already looking out for their own financial interests, and that is going to have an impact on their ability to vote on the law. While I believe it's true that maybe 1 or 2 of the town board members have an open mind about the law, it's very clear to me that everyone else has already made their decision. They want this project. This law is not being passed in a vacuum. It is being passed for a project, is being passed by the wind developer, for the wind developer, at the wind developer's behest, and the wind developer developed the law. This is clearly, when they talk about it being in a vacuum, it's baloney. This is for the Invenergy project that's on the table. End of story.
You want to open this one then, Mr. Karcher?
Well, okay, we're opening the meeting at 7:30. 7 o'clock, I'm sorry, thank you. And Dave, I can turn it over to you.
Okay. Again, I don't know who here knows Mark at this point.
Yes. Mark's our engineer from
MBA Consulting Engineer, Allergy Girl. Yes. Mark Allen.
And Mark's been with us since the beginning.
Since the beginning.
We got to meet. But not been able to meet. So we're going to, again, one of the things we're charged with is review under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Right. And as part of that, and maybe Mark was involved in part 1, but I know it was RD.
Yes.
And we need to work through 1, parts 2 and part 3, okay, and then
potentially issue a negative declaration. Again, it's an engineering document. It's better to have sitting next to you than an engineer. So with that, I'll let Mark start in. And again, we've already accepted part 1. Now we're working on parts 2 and 3. Right. Remember, at the public hearing, as part of that public hearing process, we asked for any and all comments with regards to seeker as well. Being there, the voluminous information we received that night, and I've provided that to Mark since, we didn't get a lot of comments with regarding parts 2 and 3 or 1 or seeker at all. Nothing. Very limited. They were all pretty relative to setbacks, and that was the bulk of the comments that we received. So,
Mark, you want to take us and start us out?
So I
I was not involved in actually completing this the first time, but we're gonna go through it right now with the board, and if there's a couple of things I'd like to add, then you're gonna have to provide some feedback. So,
To start out with, the page 1, section A, is what is the action? And the action that you are doing an environmental quality review on is adoption of a local law. In the brief description of it, it just describes just the name of the law as it's proposed, and a copy of the local law will be attached. And I believe you all have that local
Yes.
law. And again, remember, as we go through this whole process, what are we doing? We're adopting a law. Okay, so, and it's stated in the brief description that the local law does not authorize any project or physical activity. And I think it would be useful if you could rehearse the Article 10 and how that all works with the board right now. It's my understanding, once the project is started, okay, the environmental review is done at a state level under Article 10 because of the fact it's over 25 megawatts. We're out of it at that point. They make the determination of they'll do an environmental impact statement.
Right.
There will be a scoping session so that all of these impacts can be considered. Scoping's really a cool process. It's where everybody comes into the room very early and tells all of their concerns. You guys probably could be the best ones to go because you've been scoped when we've been doing this with this local law. You've heard all the different comments. I mean, we got them here.
Yeah.
Again, but that's scoping with regards to siting the actual turbines. This has nothing to do with siting a turbine. This has adopting a law. Again, look back A1, okay? You're adopting a law. You're not citing anything.
so that's really the action we should be focusing on as we go through these questions. Okay, so that, as far as the project and sponsor information, it's just addresses, phone numbers, email address.
So we'll go to page 2, government approvals. And what, this form is a guidance document prepared by DEC for you to use to properly go through this process. And what you're doing when you look at B is you're attempting to identify all the agencies that will be involved in having a review or approval of the action so that you can determine if there should be a coordinated or not review and who should be contacted. Obviously, the Farmersville Town Board is an involved agency, and because of the General Municipal Law 239M, it has to be referred to the County Planning Board, so they've been listed as well. There are no other agencies that have that are involved in the adoption of this local law that I'm aware of. Is anyone else aware of it?
No,
Dave, are you?
Not that I can think of, because again, you don't have a planning board.
no, we don't have zoning,
There are no municipal commissions here.
no.
Okay.
Okay, so those two are listed, so I think that we should be in good shape there. And then under C is planning and zoning.
That needs to be changed,
Why is that, Rob?
isn't it? Because we don't have zoning.
You don't have any zoning at all?
No.
Well, let's just look at C1 first, okay? Will the administrative or legislative action or amendment of a plan, local law, ordinance, rule, or regulation be the only approval which must be granted to enable the proposed action to proceed? Your proposed action is to amend a local law, so the answer to that question is yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then it says, if yes, complete section C, F, and G.
And if no, you proceed to question C2 and complete all the remaining questions. So because you're only doing a local law, the questions you're asked to complete are C, F, and G. So we're going to do all of C. So C2, the first is, do any municipally adopted, that'd be city, town, village, or county, comprehensive land use plans include the site where the action will be located? The site is basically your town.
Right.
Do you have a comprehensive plan?
We're going underneath the county, we use a county. We're
But
not-
you don't have, you haven't adopted a you do not comprehensive. have a town comprehensive plan?
No, the answer's no.
Okay, so the answer should be no then.
And so it says, if yes, does it include specific recommendations? And the answer, that's not applicable. Is the site of the proposed action within any local or regional special planning districts?
No.
And now, we want to raise any question that came up in this letter.
That, the watershed plan?
Because the Issaquah Creek Watershed Management District,
Is that here?
it's partly in this town.
Part of it.
That's a flood control district.
Okay.
That would be,
So my guess is that it would be useful to list that on.
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Do they have an actual committee or group that meets?
Yeah, it's sort of managed by the Cattaraugus County Soil and Water Conservation District, and they do annual inspections and more frequent inspections if necessary on the dam sites, and they budget money to maintain the dams and make sure that there's not a hazard presented, and because they're all permitted dams, they have to be actively managed.
Okay.
And that's what they do. So basically, they're not so much focused on the watershed so much as they are the flood control. But that's what they do. Okay, then C2C is the proposed action located wholly or partially within the area listed in an adopted municipal open space plan or an adopted municipal farmland protection plan.
We have a right to farm law.
You were right, but under 25 AA of the Ag and Markets Law, you also have a certified agricultural district.
You do.
Okay. Gotcha.
In that's a county ag district or a town? Probably county.
Both.
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 Well, typically, you should know, yeah, typically they're by the county. I'm not aware of any.
Well, I mean, we don't have anything special, but, you know.
What's that?
our town, we don't have anything about, we have a district, that's all.
You have the right to farm law, but it's ag, but it's county ag district. The ag district number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't know. Do you have a map?
You know, I can find that out for you.
No.
It's called the Farmersville Freedom Agricultural District.
I've never seen them called other than numbers, you know. Farmersville Freedom.
So we changed that to yes, and I listed on here that the town has a right to farm law, and that there are parcels within the town that are part of the Cattaraugus County Farmersville Freedom Agricultural. Okay. So then we're into C3 zoning. Is the site of the proposed action located in a municipality with an adopted zoning law?
No.
Then the answer to that is no. So there is no zoning classification. I mean, you'd have to list them all if you have those.
Which are many. Okay.
But is the use permitted or allowed is not applicable.
Well, it's interesting because it is permitted under their existing local law. You know what I'm saying? If there's no zoning, but under their local law,
2009 and 2007, right?
yeah, it does permit this type of use. For sake of discussion, it's still probably a no, but just keep going.
Yeah, I think it's more of a non-applicable because you don't have a zoning law.
There you go. That's
So
good.
it's not permitted by the zoning law, and it's not allowed by special or conditional use permit.
Oh,
So it's
Right.
not applicable is what I think of it.
I like your answer.
Is the zoning change requested? And the answer again would be not applicable. Okay, then C4, existing community services. In what school district is the project located? So, I understand you have 3 different districts in the town, so we should list all 3.
Franklinville,
Pioneer.
Pioneer,
Rush.
How much school could I do it? That could be listed too, right?
should.
Yeah.
I mean, is there more than one?
2 that I know of.
So you have Pioneer, Cuba, Rushford, and Franklinville?
Saying no to Amish schools.
Okay, that's a good idea. Those are serious. What police or other public protection forces serve probably county and state?
State.
Fire protection and emergency medical services?
Farmersville Fire
Franklinville.
Department, Franklinville Fire Department, and Arcade Free.
So you have 2 fire contracts?
Well, Farmersville covers the some, like for ambulance, Arcade comes in on one side of Farmersville for ambulance. We provide the EMS, but Arcade provides the ambulance. We have, fire protection, part of Freedom, and Farmersville, and then Franklinville has an ambulance contract too. They don't go on that side of Farmersville.
So I'm not sure I got all
So
that.
let's get it then, so you've got.
Okay, so you got Farmersville covers.
Let's just start with fire protection.
Farmersville Fire Department covers, or Fire District covers all of Farmersville and a portion of Freedom.
I don't wanna know about Freedom.
Okay,
I
so
just
they
wanna know about
go,
Farmersville.
they cover all of Farmersville.
Okay.
Franklinville ambulance contract covers all the way to
So that's
Farmersville. They cover majority of Farmersville except for this one side that's like the line of Freedom and Farmersville.
That's our.
They don't, Arcade covers that with ambulance.
so that's emergency.
Yeah, that's emergency. We do EMS, but we don't provide the ambulance.
Okay.
It's like 1, 2, 3 roads, the Arcade.
Arcade does.
Yeah,
Basically up in the northwest
Right.
corner.
yes,
Be northeast.
Northeast corner?
northeast corner.
All right. And what park serves the project? So is there a town park?
No.
Is there any county parks or
Well,
state parks?
is Harwood Lake a multi-use facility for the
There's
state
no parks or
DEC?
anything, no.
I mean, it's
And we have thousands of acres of state
state
land.
land, but there's no actual
But
multi-use.
there's no actual
Mm.
It's not
technical
really
area,
a park.
Okay.
Well, we'll just list state forest,
County
various
forest too.
locations.
You have a county forest too?
County forest.
Mm.
Where's that county forest?
It's down past, the lake, isn't it?
There's a little piece left over here
Yeah.
on
Back
98.
and then,
No, there's none left
oh, there's one
on
down
my
there.
house. I wrote it
Oh,
all.
okay.
Okay, and then Harwood
Harwood
Lake,
Lake.
that's just,
DEC.
is that a state
Multi-
recreation or multi?
I think it's a multi-use area is what it says in the sign.
Right, I think that's, yeah, 'cause hiking, fishing, camping. I don't think we call it a park because
Trying to
there's
get
tables
no
or
facilities,
facilities.
yeah.
No
Trying to get them to
facilities.
put something there.
No, it's just listed all on.
They don't even have bathrooms, do they?
Mm-mm.
No,
No.
just trees.
Basically, what you're trying to do here is get all the background information you know and answer these questions. Okay, so, going back to the first one, complete C, F, and G, so D and E will not apply. And if you notice, D is, actually gets into more details of the actual developments that are being proposed. And since you're not doing that, it's
We're
not,
not at the park.
you're not being asked to complete that. And E begins on page 9, where and not doing that as well. That's more about the siting and the setting.
Again, it's a multi-purpose form designed for every particular scenario, and lots of it just doesn't get worked out.
It doesn't apply on the local law. It obviously would apply on a wind energy project. When the project has to be finished. So then after there's additional information, so is there any additional information you think would be appropriate to clarify the project?
The very last, we don't have to do E.
No.
No. So we're on page 13 and 13.
I can't think of it all. I can't think of it all.
I mean, you can put it, attach a copy of the local law. Does the text of the law refer to the changes being made from the previous law?
No, it's a wholesale change in the law.
So it might be useful to include the old one as
I could do that. 2000, include 2007 and, or 2009.
2009.
2007, it looks like the exact same law.
Right, I know. Maybe include all three of them.
Well,
That
is 2007 still in effect, or
No.
2009 superseded?
Oh,
It's a good question, because I'm not so sure 2007 was wholly repealed.
Oh.
Because the repealer language in 2007 is not real strong.
In the 2009?
Yes.
Okay. Well, whatever, I think it would be useful for somebody looking this information over to be able to understand what changes.
We'll include 7 and 9 in our referral.
All right, and then, what would be appropriate would be that the supervisor sign this, and I think, since you all worked on this together, it would, if, with those changes, somebody should make a motion to direct the supervisor to sign it on behalf of the town board.
I have
I'll
no
make a motion. I'll make a
motion by
motion.
Pam, second.
I'll second it with the changes we made.
Second by AJ with the changes made. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
Okay. So that's your part one.
So we'll get this printed up. I'll recycle it.
No, actually,
Want to edit it.
I want it just as you scribbled on it, because
Okay.
that
Okay,
is,
and I'll sign that
that's
copy.
the intent of this, is that it's a working document, that
Right.
you mess it up and you use different color pens from day to day, you draw pictures on it, you put your doodling on it,
Yeah.
that's the best,
So this is what
that's
you want?
it, that's it.
All I have is black ink, so
Here, I got blue, go ahead, my
yeah,
friend.
maybe blue.
I would love to get another color there,
There you go.
beautiful. I always like green.
I'll make sure.
Red?
Never read.
Never red.
Today is 12/3.
Okay.
Why don't you write under your name there, as amended?
Nice.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Bridget, before we leave here tonight, you're gonna make a copy of this for us.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So the next step in the process is to go through part two, which is an identification of potential project impact.
Again, you weren't ready to do part two
Right, before.
before the public hearing.
Right.
Again, parts two
Before
and
the
three.
first time was amended.
Well, the parts 2 and 3 are only to be, addressed. I've got more if somebody needs them. Everybody got a part 2?
Everybody got one?
We just killed as many trees as we possibly could as part of this.
Yeah.
Looked over you for sure.
I'm gonna beat you with a part 3, but I'm gonna get it out there before you can.
All right. Okay, part two. And what happens here is, of course, this is a type 1 action. We forgot to mention that.
Type 1, because it deals with the entire town, and it's more than 25 acres because it's the entire town. That's what triggered it. because you questioned that.
Right, I
You guys
just
doing a
asked.
local law, why are you doing a part two? The trigger is it's more than 25 acres.
So the full environmental assessment form is required when it's a type 1 action. The type 1 action, basically what the secret law says is that it's a type of action that under many circumstances will result in some significant environmental impact, so they want you to take a closer look. If it's a type 2 action, a type 2 action are those that are identified in the law as that they will not have a significant impact just by the nature of the project. And then everything else is called an unlisted action. And you're not a type 2 action, that's for sure.
Right.
And because what Dave just mentioned in terms of the potential impact, we're thinking it should be classified as type 1. And so it's not an unlisted. If it's an unlisted action, there's a more abbreviated version of this form that you use, but because it's a type 1, we use this form.
Cool thing with type 2 actions, you're always happy when you get a type 2 action, because all you have to do is acknowledge it's a type 2 action, and you're done. You don't have to go through all these forms, you just want to make the acknowledgement, this is a type 2 action, we're done.
Okay.
It's something like repaving a road that's already there,
Right.
or replacing a piece of storm sewer that's already there, something like
Probably remediation of this building.
that. Might be, yeah, as long as you're not adding it or stirring up any asbestos there.
Yeah, cover it up.
Okay, so we're gonna go through this question by question, and the way this works is there's a general category of action, and then they raise a number of points that they want you to think about before you make any kind of a decision on whether you think it will have a no impact, a small impact, or a moderate or large impact.
Again, remember what our action is. Number 1A, 1A1, we're adopting a law, okay?
We got an amendment to
An
it.
amendment to law, remember.
So the first thing is the impact on land. In the statement here is a proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site. And if we're not doing any disturbance to the ground, we're not doing any
Right.
actual action. So it would seem to me the answer is no, but what is your thoughts?
I agree with that.
No, because it's just the law, not the potential project itself.
The only possible way you get there is the number of pieces of paper that
No.
Mark and I put together
Right.
in concert.
All right, so if no, move on to section 2. So as long as there's no section.
And everyone agrees now, so we're
Okay, impact on geological features. The proposed action may result in the modification or destruction of, or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site. Example, cliffs, dunes, minerals, fossils, caves. Could be a lot of other things.
That'd be no small.
And we'll go back to the action. You're adopting a law, you're not authorizing a project.
All right.
So does anybody have any thoughts on that?
No,
Well,
Rob?
that's no.
okay, so, but by adopting the law, you're setting the stage for the project.
Yeah, but if it's a project, you can't analyze a project right now because you don't have the information in front of you.
Not at this
So you
point.
can't analyze the project. There's no project here, all you've got is a law.
Once the project is, the application's filled out and stuff, then it would be different.
So does it make a difference? I mean, I could see, so if we were doing this in 2012 and there wasn't a proposed project, I mean, to me that becomes pretty definitive. But now if there's a proposed project, that doesn't change the way that you would address these?
I don't think it can because, again, if you want to analyze the project and it's over 25 megawatts, it has to be done at the state level.
Okay, I'm just trying
I'm
to
with you.
make sure
I think it's a great question.
Okay.
No, it's a good question.
Great question, yeah. Because it does, and again, you have to always go back to 1A, what is it, it's the law.
Right.
Adopting a law, not approving or disapproving.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
But Richard's point is that the law
Makes it
sets
stage.
some standards for a project, whether it's this project or a future project. But the action does not result in any modification of the ground surface.
Okay.
Nice clarification, thank you.
Okay, and then number 3, impacts on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies, streams, rivers, ponds, or lakes. Again, the Alley Cat project may, if it were to go forward, but this action that you're doing is a local law, so does that happen with the local law?
No.
And you know, it's difficult to look beyond the Alley Cat project, but there could be a future project. That one might not happen, and the future one may happen. So that's why it's important to focus on what you're doing rather than, you don't have enough information to evaluate that project.
If you go through A through K, and you realize how you can't answer those questions with what you're doing right now. It's a law. In a project, you would have more information to deal with this stuff.
It might be helpful just to go through A through K, just so you can
See
I've been reading them as we go.
how inept we are in dealing with it because there's no project.
Because A is, let's just run through them. A is the proposed action may create a new water body.
Perfect example of this, if you had a Walmart project, and it was sitting here to put a Walmart in, there would be a retention pond someplace for the water from the parking lot and the roof. You'd be checking that, yes, small or moderate impact. You know, it would be there. You would see it in the drawings. You don't have drawings, all we're talking about is a law.
Right.
So the proposed action may result in increase or decrease of over 10% or more than a 10-acre increase or decrease in the surface area of any body of water. Will it involve dredging a wetland? You know, I don't know if we need to go through them all, but you can see that these types of things.
Because we're adopting a law, we're not that intensive into that analysis.
Okay, so number 4 on page 3, impact on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. Any thoughts on that? I mean, it really comes down to the same type of an answer each time.
Right.
You're adopting a local law which sets some standards that would potentially govern,
Future projects.
potentially I say because of Article 8. It's really not even going to be all your call. And I think the answer to this is no. I think everyone agree. Does everyone on the board agree with that?
Yeah, you can't answer these questions without understanding, is there piling being done? Are they doing geotech studies?
Right.
They probably will.
Are they injecting
water?
water? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, number 5, impact on flooding. The proposed action may result in development on lands subject to flooding. And you look at some things, is it in a designated floodway, 100 floodplain, 500 floodplain? Will it require modification of existing drainage? Well,
But we don't know.
You don't know.
Right.
Because all you're doing is adopting a law, a framework, which when they go, if they do bring us a submission for a proposal,
That might change
obviously this says what they have to consider.
and if they do, if a project is proposed, it will be required to get a stormwater permit from DEC under the general permit, and that there's a whole set of guidelines that governs this sort of activity. You have a local law regarding development of the floodplain, I'm sure. Every town has to have one. So you've already got a local law that deals with that. The DEC permit process will require them to do actively manage stormwater runoff during construction so that they don't end up with excessive siltation of water bodies and that they don't have a lot of erosion happening. And then they'll also have to incorporate permanent measures if they disturb more than an acre of ground, which any kind of a project of that nature is going to do. And the permanent measures require that they they control stormwater runoff, so it's no worse after development than before development. In other words, no greater cubic feet per second of runoff leaving the site than did before they started. But all of that would be something that would be looked at the time a project was done. And you're not reviewing a project right now. What you're doing is considering a local law. Okay, well then we're on to 6 impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. And the proposed action, again, is other than all the hot air generated talking about it.
Right.
Yeah, I think those are probably no.
I agree.
Okay, then, number 7 is impacts on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna. Well, it seems, following the criteria we used on the others, that would be the same. Okay, impact on agricultural resources. The proposed action may impact agricultural resources.
Again, you're adopting a law, you're not citing a project. Tomorrow, there's not going to be a wind tower on top of anybody's cornfield.
Correct.
When there may be an impact because of the law, but the time that determination or that impact is to be analyzed is when there's a project. You have a law now that could impact agriculture,
Right.
but until there's an application, there isn't anything of value. You start looking at, again, going through the impacts on agriculture. Proposed action may impact soil classifications within the soil group 1 through 4. We don't, proposed action may sever, cross, or otherwise limit the access to agricultural land. Not the law. Not the law. It gives you a guideline, gives you a framework.
Yeah, it would, this would very much become an issue when the seeker review is done on a project. So when the state conducts the seeker review, if this project moves forward to a full application, then these things would have to be taken into consideration. Right. And Mr. Abraham's letter even talks about a project where the state siting board took these things into consideration when they looked at a project and said you have to modify your project because of the potential impact on agricultural resources.
When you have a project, Ag and Markets will be an interested and involved agency. So you'll be getting, when you go through scoping and your EIS, they'll be an active participant. There will be a long interaction between your consultants and their consultants if there's ever a project, making determinations on whether there's an impact. I know one of the big things with some of the projects I've seen is soil compression, right, or compaction, and everything they were driving, they had to drive on mats so that the soil didn't become compacted. I never, you see them bring those large manure spreaders. I don't think about compaction, but was a big issue with regards to the large equipment they were bringing on premises going across fields. But again, that comment is something that you're going to hear in that next phase, if there's ever a next phase. I'm not telling you there is. Right. I'm just saying, if you adopt this, that may be an issue.
Well, I think it will be.
Yep.
But number 9, impact on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource. So, again, we're adopting a local law, but just to give you some perspective, if you were looking at a project, you would look at something like the Harwood Lake multi-use area and say, okay, someone having picnic there doesn't see any industrial scope scale things going on. If one was proposed within that view shed, then that should be taken into consideration. So if if you were doing a review on the project, this would be one of the areas you would focus. If you're doing a review on the local law. So with that in mind, you agree that it should also be a no on this one as well. Okay, number 10, impact on historic and archaeological resources. So there are, again, this is adopting a local law, but in the context of an actual project, there are areas that are on the Register of Historic Places, and there are archaeologically sensitive areas that SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, has identified. And so if you fall within one of those or substantially contiguous to one of those, you need to do more work. That would be the project applicant. You need to do more work. So it'd be no in the case of your local library, but it likely will become a player in the project if a project moves forward. Okay, number 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or a reduction of an open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. I don't know that you have a municipal open space plan.
No.
But you don't actually have any land use plan in front of you. So you're doing a local law, so the answer would seem to me to be no.
Agreed.
An impact on critical environmental area. There are certain critical environmental areas that are defined within New York State, and at last count, there were none in Cattaraugus County, so I doubt there's any in Farmersville. So the answer to this would be no, regardless. Number 13, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. Once again, a wind energy project probably would. However, you're not considering a wind energy project, you're considering a local law. Number 14 is impact on energy. The proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. Once again, you do a local law. Do you see any impact on energy with the local law? I should say the amendment to the local law. Okay, number 15, impact on noise, odor, and light. The proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting.
No as well.
Does anyone else agree with that? Okay. So, again, we're adopting a local law, but just to give you some perspective, if you were looking at a project, you would look at something like the Harwood Lake multi-use area and say, okay, someone having picnic there doesn't see any industrial scope scale things going on. If one was proposed within that view shed, then that should be taken into consideration. So if you were doing a review on the project, this would be one of the areas you would focus. But you're doing a review on the local law. So with that in mind, you agree that it should also be a no on this one as well. Okay, number 10, impact on historic and archaeological resources. So there are, again, this is adopting a local law, but in the context of an actual project, there are areas that are on the Register of Historic Places, and there are archaeologically sensitive areas that SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, has identified. And so if you fall within one of those or substantially contiguous to one of those, you need to do more work. That would be the project applicant that need to do more work. So it'd be no in the case of your local library, but it likely will become a player in the project if a project moves forward. Okay, number 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or a reduction of an open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. I don't know that you have a municipal open space plan,
No.
but you don't actually have any land use plan in front of you. So you're doing a local law, so the answer would seem to me to be no.
Agreed.
An impact on critical environmental area. There are certain critical environmental areas that are defined within New York State, and at last count, there were none in Cattaraugus County, so I doubt there's any in Farmersville. So the answer to this would be no regarding. Number 13, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation system. Once again, a wind energy project probably would. However, you're not considering a wind energy project, you're considering a local law. Number 14 is impact on energy. The proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. Once again, you do local law. Do you see any impact on energy with the local law? I should say the amendment to the local law. Okay, number 15, impact on noise, odor, and light. The proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting.
No as well.
Yeah, does everyone else agree with that? Okay. Number 16, impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants.
No, it's just a law.
Okay, does anybody else have any thoughts on that? I mean, you go through them all, these are all talking about specific projects. I mean, one of the things you probably should take into consideration, because this has been raised quite a bit in the public record, is that if a project were proposed in the town, there could potentially be impacts on human health. So when a project is done, those things need to be taken into consideration. That's what the state is supposed to consider, I assume.
And to some extent, your law covers human health, talks about setbacks, decibel levels. I mean, I don't think you have a sound or a decibel level or a noise law in the town of
No, we tried.
Farmersville now.
We tried and it didn't go through.
Right. You know, again, when you think about it, what you're complaining now is about milker, the suction pump on a milking machine. That's what makes, that can run, 24/7. That's your biggest noise producer today.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can control that because they have a farm.
So there, the reason I wanted to bring that out is because you need to thought that through as you consider the potential impacts of your action, which is the local law. And so as long as everybody still feels no, we'll move along here. Number 17, consistency with community plans. Is the proposed action consistent with adopted land use plan? Or is it not consistent? You don't have an adopted land use plan in the town. No. There's not even a comprehensive plan of any sort, like a master plan or anything like that. So then the answer would be just no by default. Number 18, consistency with community character. The proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character.
It's not a project.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that, Mr. Supervisor?
I mean, there is a proposed project, though.
Is
Well,
there?
there's no permit.
There's
Well,
no
when it-
original
application.
then.
When it says a proposed project, is it the action that you consider?
And again, the action is the adoption of the law. It keeps going back to that first
Yeah.
section, that first
Yeah.
box.
It's interesting though, it always says proposed action, but on this one it says proposed project.
Right.
And then you look down and it says, all the sub-questions, all says proposed action.
And another time.
That's the first
it will
time I've seen
be
it.
considered.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that is part two. Now, you don't have to limit yourself to part two. If there's any other discussion you want to have about potential impacts of your local law, this is the time to do that.
Of making changes to our local law?
Well, no, well, that would be the end result. Like, if you think there is something about the local law as proposed that it could have a potential impact, now's the time to be thinking about that and maybe modifying if necessary to do that, if anybody feels that way.
I totally understand the way we're going through this. Some of my clients, and actually my brother has a site working company, so I understand the fact that when you do a project, you have to go through all that kind of stuff. So that's when it's decided whether it can go forward or not. So I get all that, and so I understand it. I think you guys do. And then we're not just saying, no, because I'm not.
Sure.
Just to say that, I totally understand what that means.
Yeah, I don't think we're done looking at our local law, so.
Right.
And again, we're still waiting for the comments back from the county. I mean, it's one of the things you guys have impressed upon me, and we'll get to in a second.
Right.
Once we get through parts 2 and 3, because we gotta do parts 2 and 3 before we can make our, because of where we are at this point.
So with the amendment, well, we didn't do no amendments, so, my signature would be good.
Well,
Well,
we're not there yet.
So that's some
Part two is just allows you to,
think, just a
just
thinking document.
think it all.
Talk about it, discuss it.
And I just wanted to make sure we shook every bush here.
Right.
And so that's why I said you don't have to limit yourself to this question.
You got to beat me to that too?
Stable.
It's a stable
Sorry, I just wanted to get ahead of you. I'm gonna have to take all these things home.
Okay, well, part three now is an evaluation of the magnitude and importance of the project impacts and the determination of significance. And, you know, I'll defer to you, but it would seem to me that you need a response to the 239M referral. You should have one because they're an involved agency before you.
That's why I think they're all wrong in the original comment. And I've told you guys about this, and again, the 239 L&M referral, you give them what you've got, and this is what where the problem begins and ends. Where the county planner and the county attorney, whoever made this determination, is that now they're going to receive where we are. They said we need parts 2 and 3. Well, we've got parts 2 and 3 here. You're going to get them, and you're going to get all the information we've got to this point.
Right.
Here it is. This is what we've got on this project. Right here.
So then, the way I would understand it then is that they said they need this before they can give you their.
Correct.
So they're basically asking you to proceed with your environmental review before receiving comment.
And it's totally wrong. Because
Yeah, it seems out of
when you read the statute and you read, when you do any cursory review of 239, you're supposed to give it its earliest juncture so that you're going to get the county's comments early on so you can start considering it. When they decided, oh, we're not going to accept it because parts 2 and 3, this part 3 is, we can't finish it until we have your
And
comments.
we couldn't do two really before either.
Well, because we weren't lead agent.
I guess, yeah. So anyway, we can go ahead and go through this.
I think we have to. I mean, because you're telling me you want me to give them what they've asked for, parts 2 and 3.
We may have to, you may be back again another night to go through part 3 again, only from the fact that, look, I don't want to wait anymore for them to try to fix this, because it doesn't make sense. They're supposed to comment at the earliest possible juncture. They've delayed that, now we've got, they can review the action with all the information we've got to date. Here it is, review it. You know,
Which we didn't have before.
we didn't before the public hearing.
Right.
You know, the hour and a half that we sat through, you know, now we've got that stuff, and now they can consider it, which is nice, because again, we got a lot of information that night.
Right.
Do we want to spend any more time with that?
I don't think so at this point. I mean, I think we've covered, I believe we've covered every issue. And again, the letter's untimely, but I mean, it is good, it is a good assistant tool to look at the various things, and I think that's helpful. I always take any help we can get.
Absolutely.
And again, that's what we were hoping from the county planning board, is that they would give us their guidance and any wisdom that they had at an early juncture.
We were misinformed.
Well, okay, so that's the direction we're going to go.
Yeah, and if we have to do part 3 again, we'll do it again.
What do you mean by that?
Because it's going to do the go now.
Mark indicated that you usually like the interested and involved agencies' determinations before you go through part 3. We're not going to have the benefit of that because, again, they're saying you need to give us parts 2 and 3 before we'll respond.
Okay. So once they do the review, then we might go through part 3 again.
We may, yeah, we may amend it. Typically, it's many times you'll get very detailed comments about your law, but typically you'll get no countywide impact. You know, they use it's a check mark form that lots of times you get back from these county agencies, and it's not real informative. Hopefully we get something that will again turn us on our heads and make us look sideways at this and say, oh wow, this is some new information, let's consider it. So we may revise part 3.
So then all you would do is reopen your secret investigation, make provisions, and finish it up again.
Because again, this isn't over with to adopt your law or make a motion to you know, do nothing. You know, say, look, we're fine with 2009, and this was all just a fun enterprise that we engaged in for no reason. We just had to spend a lot of time together, and we've got new friends.
Okay, so well, I'm just going to read this. So for your benefit and the benefit of other people in the room, Part 3 provides the reasons in support of the determination of significance. The lead agency must complete Part 3 for every question in Part 2 where the impact has been identified as potentially moderate or large, or where there is a need to explain why a particular element of proposed action will not, as may result in a significant adverse environmental impact. Based on the analysis of Part 3, the lead agency must decide whether to require an environmental impact statement to further assess the proposed action or whether available information is sufficient for the lead agency to conclude that the proposed action will not have a significant adverse environmental impact. By completing the certification on the next page, the lead agency can complete its determination of significance. So, to complete this section, you have to identify the impact based on the Part 2 response and describe its magnitude. We didn't identify in Part 2 any potential impact. So then the second is assess the importance of the impact, but we didn't identify any. And importance relates to geographic scope, duration, probability of the impact occurring, number of people affected, and additional environmental consequences. The assessment should take into consideration any design element or project changes. We don't actually have a project. Repeat this process for each Part 2 question, where the impact has been identified as potentially moderate or large, or where there is a need to explain why a particular element of the action will not or may result in significant adverse impacts. So since we haven't identified any impacts, the question we need to ask ourselves and perhaps write up as a Part 3 is, do you feel it's necessary to explain why you determined there would be no impact on anyone?
Do it one sentence. Proposal law.
Well, yeah, right. That's true. I'm gonna write that down. Okay. Attach additional sheets as necessary, the other things don't apply there, so, next page. Upon review of the information recorded on this EAF as noted, plus this additional support information. We have the proposed local law. Is there any other information, Dave, that you think we should get? I mean, I don't know if you attach a whole book to a secret information.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the whole book will go to the county under
Right.
239 hour referral. It's interesting, would you put the whole body of information in the public hearing? I've never seen it done that way.
No. Not for a,
Not for a law, especially. If we're in, again, if we were at the other end of this and if all this was gonna be submitted,
Then you would.
we would be in an EIS.
Right.
so this would, you'd have a whole scoping meeting.
Right, right. And again, that's why this, again, it's somewhat out of order.
Yeah, adopting a local law is never out of order. I mean, the board can do that whenever they think it's appropriate. So,
So what's the discussion? Because if you're gonna send that to them, what are we discussing?
We're sending this to the county. This
Right.
is our neg deck.
but when we'll have a package of information that is your environmental review. So it's gonna be part 1, part 2, any part 3 we just wrote, just like a 2-sentence part 3.
Right.
And then any attached information. So the question I asked was, are we attaching anything besides the draft local law
I don't think
to
it's
the
retired.
environmental document? And I'm sorry, I'm
It was
getting,
supposed to be-
Councilman Warner raised the question, do we want to put this whole book attached to it?
No,
Right.
I don't think so. I think once we get the counties, our,
Well, if we get the
Then we
counties
attach
on this
that.
bag,
then we attach that.
that would be related to local laws, we could attach that if we're,
Right.
if we
We
get
get
open
comment.
recommended.
If we do.
Right,
That would be appropriate.
I think that would be, yes. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, you attach it just means if somebody foils it, you gotta give them a higher pile of information.
Which we do anyway, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they can ask for the record of public hearing, then you
Right.
give them that. They ask for the secret documents, I mean, it's available anyway.
Right.
So it's not really, I don't think, all that important.
I guess I'm still confused. I thought I heard you say that you're gonna send that to them anyways.
No. Okay, 2 separate actions.
Okay.
Now we're
That's
talking, okay, now we're talking about parts 2 and 3 of seeker.
Okay.
And issuing our neg deck.
Right.
Okay? We would, this booklet here is going pursuant to 239L and 239L of the general municipal law to the county. So we're gonna set part 2 and 3. I don't see this being part of parts 2 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I sort of agree with
Yeah.
So they would get it as a matter of due course, but not just necessarily specifically in reaction to parts 2 and 3 of the seeker.
They're gonna get it in accordance with 239L.
Right.
Because that, we're gonna refer,
our obligation under 239L is to refer all the information we have.
That'd be everything.
Okay? Again, we couldn't complete parts 2 and 3 until we had their response to us.
Right.
That's what Mark's saying, hey, look, you know, we're sort of out of
Kind of
out of the
hard to
loop
figure out
here.
where-
Well, that's because they didn't take it when we initially referred it prior to our public hearing. I've done hundreds of public hearings on these types of things that we refer, whether they're zoning changes or local laws. Typically, you'll have the county response, and you'll usually read it at the beginning of your public hearing. You remember when we started our public hearing, we met, and I said, look, we don't have that, and we're not going to have it, but it doesn't preclude us. My position has been all along that they got it in a timely manner. They made a determination it was outside the bounds of law, and we don't need to remit to them. You've said, Dave, we really want to hear what they've got to say. These are people who are appointed to this board. They have an interest in this, and we'd like to hear what they have to say. And you instructed me to resubmit this, so we're going to resubmit. So, you know, so we're going to get their information. Again, we may get just a checkbox, and we might be done with it. Yeah.
All right, so,
If nothing else, we're giving them something to do before Christmas.
Right.
yeah.
Could we just, you know,
All right, so following the form directly, you as lead agency, they give you an A or B or C to check. A is the project will result in no significant adverse impacts on the environment, therefore an environmental impact statement need not be prepared. Accordingly, this negative declaration is issued. That's A. B would be, although the project could have a significant adverse impact, the impact will be avoided or substantially mitigated because of the following conditions which will be required. And that can apply on a project. And I've seen that done many times, but not on a local law.
The wording, they use this action through the whole thing, and then they change the word in the project.
I know.
Because actions.
Your project is basically to adopt this local law. It's an action. And, you know, we can feel free to change the word project to action when we do this form if you want to.
You're the engineer.
I know.
You hang on small details.
Yeah, when you hear the word project, everyone is,
Right.
myself included, I see the word project, I'm like, how do we check it?
Well, then we'll just change the word to action.
Because that's what it's completely talking about. And again, we're always going back to that first box. You know, what is the action?
at this point.
And then C, this action may result in one or more significant adverse impacts on the environment. An environmental impact statement must be prepared to further assess the impacts and possible mitigations and explore alternatives to avoid or reduce those impacts. Accordingly, this positive declaration is issued. So, just so you understand the process, if you were to choose box A, you just issue a negative declaration. Basically, when you say negative declaration, it sounds like you're saying this is no good.
Right.
But what you're saying is, we do not see any potential impacts on the environment of the action. Okay? And then B, in B's case, you would say, well, if we make a change in the project activity, then there won't be an impact, so we're going to list those conditions here before we say there's no. And then under C, if you issue a positive declaration, what you're saying is there are a series of impacts that are likely unavoidable, so they need to be looked at in more detail. So we're going to issue a positive declaration. And then the next step in that process would have been to have a scoping session and look at, because you can't just tell somebody to do an environmental impact statement.
So scoping's key because then you get the community's input. If you ever get a project and they do have a scoping session, and again, if it's handled in Albany, go to a scoping session. It is the most interesting thing you'll ever hear in your entire life. And then you'll see the document come out after that, and then you'll see them begin the environmental impact statement. It's fascinating to watch that all come together. and to hear the things that people comment. It's amazing how bright people are and how interested people are in the community and various nebulous things that you might never think about. But, you know, somebody there knows something about something. It's fabulous to hear them talk about.
I would say is the most appropriate answer.
So,
First.
the way to do this, you're gonna make this decision by a formal resolution, and we have a draft for you to consider.
I've got a resolution. Yeah, but mine's a little different. The way that we use mine. It's the same.
Same language as
Yeah.
the roll call.
Do you want to read it, Rob, or you want me to read it?
Well, before we,
See the neg deck?
yeah, I'd like to, I think it's appropriate, before you pass a resolution, to look at the draft of the negative declaration. This is a draft.
Does everybody, do you have all that too, the neg deck? Okay.
Okay, the draft we put together for you, but ultimately this is your document. And what the negative declaration is supposed to do is declare what the project is, what the action is, not the project, the location, the seeker status, and the description of what it is, and then the reasons that support the action. So what we've done in this negative declaration is relist all of the potential impacts that we talked about and explain why we reached the decision that there wasn't an impact. And the way we prepared this draft is basically with the understanding that the answers would be no. If you had changed that, then we need to go in and change this document. But I don't want to read this entire page after page, but you could look at it. I think we need to spend the time to look at it and make sure you agree with what's here, because this is not mine or Dave's document, it's yours.
It's interesting, right off the beginning, it says that as set forth above, this action does not authorize the construction of a wind energy generating facility, or does it permit a specific project or development. It does, however, provide amendments to substantive requirements that apply to the siting and operation of such facilities. These amendments are a result of careful study and evaluation by this board. Any proposed project would necessarily require a review pursuant to seeker, an environmental review pursuant otherwise to applicable law. And if it's over 25 megawatts, it's typo, through the Article 10 of the process. The substantive law requirements set forth herein have been designed to reduce adverse impacts from future proposed projects, to mitigate impacts on community character, public safety, aesthetics, consistent with the community's plans and goals. Town board makes the following findings relative to proposed local law which support the issuance of a neg deck. Careful siting and protections applicable to wind energy facilities are of paramount importance. Local communities have, through zoning, site plan approval, regulation, and careful planning, been primary protectors of their citizenry. This local law will contribute to this effort. The adoption of Article 10 of the Public Service Law does not negate the responsibility. In fact, it recognizes it. The substantive requirements set forth in this local law will provide tools available to the town to ensure significant adverse environmental impacts are mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. As more fully set forth below, the proposed local law, while not authorizing development, ensures the appropriate protection and substantive requirements are in place that will take into account and mitigate potential adverse environmental It's interesting, you know, in your law too, and again, I wasn't the one involved in drafting it.
But one of the things it does go back through very quickly is it adopts the state standards for mitigating agricultural impacts. And again, section 10, subsection 14, the standards for restoration and preservation of farmland in the state of New York Department of Ag and Markets, in the agricultural market, guideline for wind power projects shall be followed. So you said, hey, look, these are the experts on this, you shall follow that. So, I mean, I know that was just some concern as to how that all impacts. You've gone right to the state standard. So Ag and Markets will be here as a participant if there's ever a proposed project. Not an action, but the action becomes the project then.
Right.
Yeah. Siting windmills.
Yeah.
Again, as you go through, we go through and comment upon traffic impacts, noise impacts, air quality impacts, wetland impacts, everything we talked about, erosion, solid waste production.
And none of this stops us from continuing to make changes to our laws as we see fit based on.
Not at all, not at all. And again, if you get something divine, and it's an intervention that shocks our conscience that, oh gosh, we can come back and say, hey, look, we're going to amend part 3 and revisit our NAGDAC, and that's all okay. Again, it would have been nice to have had their comments in a timely manner like they should have, as the law requires them to do, why they decided to take this position and play a procedural game. As I indicated to you in early September, I don't understand it.
So, is there any of the board members, you see no further comment or anything? Is there anything else?
This would be good for motion on.
Well, you want to read that, or would you like me to read that,
Okay.
Bridget?
Start top or
Okay.
where?
We can start with whereas, because you got all the rest of the stuff. We're at a special meeting, right?
Yep.
It started at
Okay.
7 o'clock. Maybe it was 7:30. It could have been 7:30.
No, it's 7:03 to be exact.
Okay.
Whereas all board members having due notice of said meeting and that pursuant to Article 7-104 of the Public Officers Law, said meeting was open to the general public and due and proper notice of the time and place whereof was given as required by law. And whereas for the purpose of promoting the effective and efficient use of the town's wind energy resource through wind energy conversion systems, and to regulate the placement of such systems so that the public health, safety, and welfare will not be jeopardized, the town proposes this wind energy facility law. And whereas the town board has determined that the action is a type 1 action under State Environmental Quality Review Act, hereafter seeker, and whereas the town board has sought lead agency for the purpose of the seeker review of said project by resolution dated and through a notice of intent to act as a lead agency, advise the potentially involved or interested agencies. And whereas the town board has received no objections to acting as a lead agency and established themselves as seeker lead agency, and whereas the town board has held public hearing on October 18, 2018, at which time and place all interested parties and citizens for or against the proposed law were given the opportunity to be heard. And whereas the town board left the public hearing open for 14 days, in which time all interested parties and citizens could submit correspondence for or against the proposed local law, and has adequate time to consider all opinions and concerns of the community. And whereas the town board has duly considered the action, the full environmental assessment form, the criteria for determining significance set forth in 6 NYCRR 617.7C, the draft negative declaration and such other information deemed appropriate. And whereas as the town board has identified the relevant areas of environmental concern, has taken a hard look at these areas and has made reasoned elaboration of the basis for its determination. Whereas the town board, in concurrence with seeker, has determined that the proposed local law will not adversely affect the natural resources of the state and/or the health, safety, and welfare of the public, and is consistent with social and economic considerations, and has determined that the proposed local law will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts.
Okay, I guess we need a motion for a roll call.
And that motion also includes that the supervisors authorized to sign part three.
Anybody have any other questions on it before we take that motion? Motion made by Pam, second. Second by Richard, all in favor? I carried. I'm gonna sign your copy of the, oh, roll call. Yes.
Mrs. Schofield.
Yes.
Mr. Zink.
Yes.
Mr. Wallman.
Yes.
Mr. Kutcher.
Yes. What's our sign underneath it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have the original part one, I did you hand it over to me too?
I think I gave you everything.
You did, thank you.
Good.
The other order, one other order of business we have is the 239L referral now. Again, this is sort of eating the dead dog that got ran over in the road, okay? Bottom line, we've talked about this, we've made the $239 referral. The county returned it to us saying you don't have parts 2 and 3. Mark's sitting here saying, you can't do parts 2 and 3 until you have the county referral.
Correct.
Response back. Yeah. So, here we go. So basically, we were going to resubmit to them, and with Mark's suggestion, we'll resubmit the 2009, the 2018 law, and the information that we received from the public at our public hearing, because again, we're supposed to submit to them everything we've got.
Right.
So we'll submit that to them. Again, the referral, I put the language in. The supervisor of the town board of the town of Farmersville did receive correspondence from the county planning board dated September 5th, which stated the referral to the town of Farmersville for the town of Farmersville was on our agenda for the August 30th meeting. As we reviewed it, it became to our attention we lacked parts 2 and 3 of the full environmental assessment form. Since those forms weren't included, it is considered incomplete and our board could not act on it. The board had sent the materials they had at the time of the referral, which is required under 239L and 239L. Whereas despite the error in the county planning board not reviewing the submitted referral, the town board, being inclusive, has determined to getting all materials to the county planning board for the better course of conduct rather than eliminating the conversation. Whereas the town board of the town of Farmersville has completed parts 2 and 3 of the full environmental assessment form and feel it's in its best interest of the town to resubmit the referral to the Cattaraugus County Planning Board with all supporting documents. The town board held a public hearing on October 8th, which time a stenographer was hired and the town recorded and prepared a transcript for the hearing. That said transcript of the hearing will also be forwarded to the county as soon as it's available. Now, on a motion of blank and seconded with blank, resolved that the town board of the town of Farmersville will re-refer the said matter in accordance with 239L of the General Municipal Law to the Cattaraugus County Planning Board, the supporting documents, parts 2 and 3 of the full environmental assessment form, and a public hearing transcript when available.
Well,
Go ahead.
why are we including that paragraph, despite the error?
Because it is.
It is an error.
It is an error. I mean, clearly 239L and 239M says you submit what you've got. As again, as we walked through this tonight, I didn't set Mark up for this. You got to have that before you do this. They asked for things we can't complete or shouldn't complete until we get their comments.
You should have the comment.
And what you sent them was inaccurate anyway.
Exactly what we're going to send them tonight.
No, at least part one is accurate now.
Okay. I get.
Oh, he gets it. It's all looking out.
It's not my style, but I'm fine with it.
You don't like it, but you're fine. You understand why we're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, it's just not my style, but that's fine.
I get it.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Pam, all in favor? Sure.
Mr. Hilton,
Yes.
Mr. Zink,
Yes.
Mr. Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
One more body of language to talk about, and I don't know how far you want to go with this, but one of the questions I prepared the defense law and I submitted it to you the last time. I mean, it's very clear in these types of matters that people are extremely litigious. And I didn't look at your budget, but I assume your salaries are probably less than $5,000 a year, maybe cumulatively less than $5,000 a year. And serving on this board, you know, if you were to get sued, you know, you don't, as I'm told, I'm not the town attorney, I'm just the attorney for this project, you don't have a defense and indemnification law. I think you should have one. I mean, for being involved in a project like this, the town has to be responsible in the event you were named in a suit for you. It's just incomprehensible that someone would sit up here. I know how much time you guys have spent thinking about this, talking about this. I know how much time I've bothered you. I know you're getting bothered by others and you're constantly thinking about this. I know how heavy this weighs on you, but to be thinking that you potentially could be having to retain an attorney and have to pay that fee isn't fair, isn't what you signed up for. And clearly, in the event that you were sued, there should be some defense and indemnification. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but I did provide you the law. If you had questions on it or thoughts on it, I'd be more than willing to ask them. Again, just like the other law, you have to have a public hearing on this, okay?
All right.
Because it's, and again, this one gets you to the coveted property state of type 2. This is an administrative law. It's not, you know, it doesn't impact 25 acres. There's nothing, it's a type 2 action.
We'll do that under a meeting. I was in favor of it. I don't know what you guys.
Again, it would trigger you guys having a public hearing, whether you did it in January or whatever. I've got the law, again, if you wanted to look at it. I've got the resolution to have the public hearing, and then I've got the public hearing notice.
Did you send the law to us previously?
Yes.
I gave it to you before your last meeting.
Oh, you handed it out to us?
Yeah.
I didn't hand it out because I wasn't here. I think it was in the packet, but I thought I did
Just make sure that.
email it to you, I thought. If I
Yeah,
did.
I believe it wasn't in that one.
And again, if you want to take it tonight, I'm here to discuss it if you wanted to, but I don't understand why you don't have this. Most communities have it just carte blanche anyways. Most people, it's usually they're getting homeowners insurance or they're getting an umbrella policy, and they ask, "Are you serve on the town board?" Well, then you'll get a call. Hey, look, we need that defense and indemnification law. My umbrella policy wants to see it. And they said, "Well, you don't have one." So they said they don't think that's a good idea. I really encourage you to take this. The town has an insurance agent.
Right.
Have you forwarded it to him? I would love for you guys to forward it to him just to see his comments on it.
Yeah.
Because he has mentioned, before, he proposed, he said that, there's certain parts in the insurance was covering with,
Legal fees.
yeah. But he never asked me if we had this, but I definitely forwarded it to him.
Would definitely be,
Again, we're going to have another meeting in a couple weeks. I'll be here again. Take it with you. And don't feel.
redo it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Mark?
No, I don't.
Dave?
I don't comment.
I do.
Any other board members have anything?
I have that one.
Okay, sir. Very good. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I take it.
I had one that the other day. I guess I'd be looking for a motion for adjournment.
Yeah, you better have that.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Motion by Amy for adjournment. Second by Pam, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried.